Welcome to Faith Talks Wood Podcast. I'm Will from Flat Woodworks.
And I'm Tom from Mountain Valley Maker.
And we're a podcast about, faith and woodworking. We talk about a little bit of everything in between, and we have fun doing it. So, Tom, I don't know if you can see from our video chat, but I'm wearing a pretty cool hat right now.
I can tell.
Yeah, I had our buddy Patrick, who was the co-founder of the podcast with me. He got a hat press and has laser engravers and all that stuff, and I had him make us a couple of hats, and so he sent them both to me to save on shipping, and then we'll talk about it a little bit later, but you and I joined the Maker Collabs Challenge of the Month to do a logo swap, and so when I send mine that is your logo to you, I'll throw the hat in there with it, and you'll have a nice Faith Talks Wood hat. So pretty excited about it. You guys can go check Patrick's page out, and he's got some stuff posted on there about it. But yeah, man, it's been an odd fall here. So we had November 1st. We had some places had almost 8 inches of snow here. We had about 5 or 6 inches here at our house. And then it was cold for a while, and then it got back up warm. It's been in like the high 50s, low 60s here again. And it's just been really strange. I spent a lot of time outside this week, brush hogging the back field. And then I put Christmas lights up yesterday. And so we record on Sundays. Yesterday was Saturday, and it was beautiful out here. And so I spent part of the day out there on the ladder putting Christmas lights up, and it's the most I've ever put up. I'm not saying I'm quite like Clark Griswold, but we've got a really nice, clean setup of lights along the whole gutter line of the house, and then we have columns on the front porch, like big columns, and so I wrap those with LED lights as well, and it looks really good, really clean, and pretty happy with that. And I hadn't done it last year, and the reason I didn't do it is, you ever get in one of those modes where you're ready to do something, and when you go to do it, something's broke and it just thwarts your whole drive to do that? That's exactly what happened with that last year. It was at our last house in Tennessee, and I went to go put the lights up, and two things happened. One, the clips that I had from the previous house didn't work on the gutters for the new house. And then when I plugged the lights in, half of them decided they didn't want to work anymore, and I couldn't find the fuse bulb, and it wasn't fixing it. And it was one of those, I'm kind of shameful to say, I threw all the lights away. I was like, I'm done with this. Screw it. I threw them all away. And they were just cheap. They weren't even LED bulbs. They were just cheap, lights or whatever we had for years. And so didn't do them last year. Well, now, we're back up here in Pennsylvania. Our son is 3.5, and then we also have a 8, almost going on 9-month-old. And I was like, yeah, we got kids now. I'm gonna put up some lights. So yeah, I did that yesterday, and pretty happy with the results. But and then yesterday also, I don't know if I sent you a picture. There was a tractor parade in our town, and so a bunch of people from the community brought their tractors and hay wagons out and decorated them in Christmas lights. And it was amazing. And let me tell you what, I'm thinking about being in it next year with my tractor.
I bet your son had an absolute ball, didn't he?
Oh my goodness. He loved it. Everyone, Daddy, tractor. And it was really cool. It was a lot of fun. It was really cold. It got down last night. It had to have been in the high 20s. And so we're out there, we're all bundled up, and I did something kind of goofy, and you're a runner and an outdoors person. You'll laugh at this. So I was out in my boots all day yesterday, in work boots, up and down a ladder. My feet were feeling it. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going to wear just running shoes to this tractor parade because I want comfort, because we're going to do some walking. There's a bunch of Christmas lights and stuff. And so I did that, and I was warm. My whole body was warm, wearing a nice cap and big winter jacket on. My feet about froze because I'm wearing mesh running shoes that are made to let air in to cool your feet off when you're running. Super comfortable, but not the most practical thing for in the, when it gets really cold out. So I
That
was
would be
I
one.
was
That's why they call them running shoes and not standing shoes.
well, even just walking around. I mean, it was so cold out that that wind, air hits your feet, and so I learned the next time we do that, I'm going to be wearing my hunting boots with some. I got 1,000 gram insulate hunting boots, so I'll be wearing those. But man, how's your week been? Just so people know, uh, we took last week off. We had some stuff going on, and this week was pretty busy, and so we haven't had the podcast in 2 weeks. Now we've got a lot of backlog, so you guys haven't missed a week, but haven't. Well, Tom and I text almost every day, but we haven't talked in a couple of weeks. So how's your week?
I've been doing kind of the same thing as you, putting up Christmas lights and everything. And sounds like a similar setup. We have a porch that wraps around, has posts, and I wrap all the posts and run the lights around the gutters. My daughter's 20 years old, but she loves Christmas and Christmas lights. And so that's kind of our thing. But we started doing that yesterday and worked on a little bit today. But our weather has been the same. We had a snowstorm back in October, and then it's like a week and a half. It's real cold, and then it warmed back up. It's been 60 degrees here this week. I was outside in shorts and a t-shirt, and then yesterday we had a rainstorm cool, and so it's much cooler today, and supposed to be dropping, and then like the forecast has like next weekend being down in the teens at night. So I think winter's coming, but I'm ready for snow, man. I'm disappointed that we've had this warm weather. I'm ready to hit the slopes, man. Come on, let's get the snow going. So
I'm ready to make
but they
some
got
snowmen.
I just want to hit the slopes on my board. But they got some snow up on the mesa last night. So and the temps are going to be cold all this week. So hopefully, hoping that by the time my daughter gets out of college for this semester, that everything be ready to roll and we can start jamming. There's several slopes that are already open over on the other parts of Colorado, but the one that we have a pass for, the local one, is not open yet, and so I have to wait for them to open up. It's because I've already bought the pass.
So
Yeah,
how
just
daring are you in snowboarding? Like, are you going down the diamonds, or are you pretty?
oh yeah, I can ride anything on the mountain, but I mean, I'm not no Shaun White doing triple backflips and any of that. I love watching that stuff, but no, I mean, a high jump for me is a couple feet, 2-3 feet in there. That's it. But most of the time, I'm 12 inches. I'm good. I'm 53 years old, so I don't need to get big air like I did when I was younger. But I basically um, I ride both what we call regular and switch. So I can ride facing right or facing left, and both of them equally as good. And so I'm more of a twist and turn, we, if you don't snowboard, you wouldn't know it, but there's a group of tricks called buttering, and it's basically where you're playing around on the tips of your board, but it's on the ground. So everything I do is kind of just, on the ground safe. I don't have health insurance. I don't want to break anything. So, I kind of ride safe, but I have a good time. So,
Yeah. So remind me. So I'm right-handed and everything. So does that mean that I would lead with my right foot?
so if you're right, it depends because my daughter is right-handed, but she strikes a soccer ball with her left foot and she snowboards at like her dominant leg is her left. So that would be in the back and then her other foot would. So the way you figure out which way you're going to snowboard, you just put a pair of socks on, run across the floor and go to slide. Whichever foot you put out front that's how your body naturally bounces. That's how you ride the board. And so for me, facing to the right is regular. For my daughter, facing to the left is regular. But But we both ride both directions and
What's interesting
fluently.
about that, I snowboarded a little bit growing up. And so I was thinking about that. We just got new floors, and so our floors are butter smooth. It's laminate, really smooth. And so, like our son, we don't allow him to wear socks, because he'll slip and fall as he's running around. But when I run and slide, I lead with my right foot. But I
Then you're a
snow,
goofy rider.
but I
No?
snowboard with my left foot forward.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh, that's
yeah.
not.
Same with the
Well, that's,
skateboard. I'll ride a skateboard with my left foot forward. And if I'm on a scooter, I'm pushing with my left foot. I don't push with my right foot.
yeah,
And so,
that's how I do it.
yeah. And I'm also left eye dominant. So I'm right handed. But if I shoot a gun, if I shoot a handgun or a rifle, it's with my left
Hmm,
eye.
really?
When I shoot photography, because I used to be in photography pretty heavy, I shoot with my left eye. Yeah. So I'm right handed, but I'm left dominant.
Wow,
So
that's interesting.
and I'm ambidextrous anyways because I've been playing drums for 25 years, and so I can write. I'm not as good with my left hand, but I can do stuff with my left hand. Every once in a while, and this is something everybody can do some normal tasks that you do with your least dominant hand, and it helps your brain grow and establish uh, what's what I'm looking for, adversity. And so I will often uh, brush my teeth with my left hand or eat my food with my left hand as a challenge, just something that you do to challenge your brain and to challenge, you know, uh, doing that. So that's just something there's a challenge for everybody to try. Try for a week every day when you brush your teeth, 2 or 3 times a day. You should be use your left hand if you're right-handed or vice versa. It's weird to start with, but you'll find that it really helps you with dexterity and just all around. I don't know. It's kind of a cool thing. So yeah,
Interesting.
but
I'm
yeah. So
definitely right hand dominant. That's for sure.
yeah, well, I'm right hand dominant. Like I throw and catch and everything right handed, and I bowl right handed. All that. I kick a ball with my right foot, but there's certain things that I'm left dominant. It's really kind of strange. I actually have a good buddy of mine who's left handed, but he throws a football better right handed, and he golfs right handed, but he's left handed everything else. So, anyways, uh, I could rant all day about that kind of stuff. I enjoy talking about that. But before we get into it, if you want to support us, there's several ways you can do so. One, you could go to patreon.com/Faith Talks Wood. Several different levels out there that you can support us financially. Support us if you are on an iPhone, which a lot of you are from the statistics. Just give us a 5-star review on there, and always you can pray for us. We just want to make sure we stay in God's will as we do the podcast, and so that goes a long way. But yeah, so Tom, you have the Bible breakdown. I'm gonna let you roll into it. I'm excited for this conversation.
Yeah. So I not long ago I started back over at the beginning of the Bible and reading it from the beginning of the Old Testament. And every time I read the Bible through, I always come across something that either it just didn't stand out to me the last time I read it, or maybe God's just speaking to me at that time differently. But yeah, we're going to read a little bit from Exodus chapter 3 and 4. And so this is just to kind of give a preface for where we're at this point in the story. So, the Hebrew people were in Egypt and they were slaves, but they were thriving. And so God's people there continued to multiply, even though they were being mistreated by Pharaoh. And, there came a point where, in their work, they would require them to do the same amount of work, but would give them less supplies, would give them less hay for making the bricks or whatever it was they were doing. And yet it still didn't keep them from thriving. And there came the point where he decided, Pharaoh gave the order to kill all the male babies. And of course, we all know the story of Moses got put in the basket in the river, picked up by the Egyptian woman. And, but he always knew that there was something different about him. And of course, we know the story of him seeing the Egyptian guard beating the Hebrew man, and he went over and killed the guard and so on. But at this point in the story, God has seen the cry of the people. And in verse 7 of chapter 3, it says, Then the Lord told him, I have certainly seen the oppression of my people in Egypt. I have heard their cries of distress because of their harsh slave drivers. Yes, I am aware of their suffering. So I have come down to rescue them from the power of the Egyptians and lead them out of Egypt into their own fertile and spacious land. And so then he's going to use Moses to help lead his people out of the Egyptian land, and of course, eventually on to the promised land. So we're going to join the story in this is chapter 3 of Exodus, verse 10. So now go, for I am sending you to Pharaoh. You must lead my people Israel out of Egypt. But Moses protested to God, Who am I to appear before Pharaoh? Who am I to lead the people out of Israel out of Egypt? God answered, I will be with you, and this is your sign that I am the one who has sent you. When you have brought the people out of Egypt, you will worship God at this very mountain. But Moses protested, If I go to the people of Israel and tell them, the God of your ancestors has sent me to you, they will ask me, What is his name? Then what should I tell them? God replied to Moses, I am who I am. Say this to the people of Israel, I am has sent me to you. And so God's telling Moses that he's going to use him to speak to the people and use him to speak to Pharaoh. And Moses is there protesting. And we're going to go on over into chapter 4, verses 1 through 17, and follow this story a little further. But Moses protested again. What if they won't believe me or listen to me? What if they say the Lord never appeared to you? Then the Lord asked him, What is that in your hand? A shepherd's staff? Moses replied, Throw it down on the ground. The Lord told him. So Moses threw down the staff, and it turned into a snake. Moses jumped back. Then the Lord told him, Reach out, grab its tail. So Moses reached out and grabbed it, and it turned back into a shepherd's staff in his hand. Perform this sign, the Lord told him. Then they will believe that the Lord, the God of their ancestors, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob, really has appeared to you. Then the Lord said to Moses, Now put your hand inside your cloak. So Moses put his hand inside his cloak, and when he took it out again, his hand was white as snow with a severe skin disease. Now put your hand back in your cloak, the Lord said. So Moses put his hand back in, and he took it out again, and it was healthy as the rest of his body. The Lord said to Moses, If they do not believe you and are not convinced by the first miraculous sign, they will be convinced by the second sign. And if they don't believe you or listen to you, even after these two signs, then take some water from the Nile River and pour it out on the dry ground. When you do, the water from the Nile will turn to blood on the ground. But Moses pleaded with the Lord, Oh Lord, I'm not very good with words. I never have been, and I'm not now. Even though you have spoken to me, I get tongue-tied and my words get tangled. Then the Lord asked Moses, Who makes a person's mouth? Who decides whether the people speak or do not speak, hear or do not hear, see or do not see? Is it not I, the Lord? Now go, I will be with you as you speak, and I will instruct you in what to say. But Moses again pleaded, Lord, please send anyone else. Then the Lord became angry with Moses. All right, he said, what about your brother Aaron the Levite? I know he speaks well, and look, he is on his way to meet you now. He will be delighted to see you. Talk to him put the words in his mouth, and I will be with both of you as you speak, and I will instruct you both in what to do. Aaron will be your spokesman to the people. He will be your mouthpiece, and you will stand in the place of God for him, telling him what to say. And take your shepherd's staff with you and use it to perform the miraculous signs I have shown you. So, thing I found interesting about this story, and I've read it many times, and I just never really picked up on Moses complaining over and over again, saying, "I'm not good enough, Lord. I can't do this. I'm not well spoken. I'm not good with words. How am I going to do this?" But yet, God had sat there and showed him all these miraculous, turning the cane into the snake, and then right back into the cane or staff, if you want to call it. Performing the miracle with his hand and his cloak. And you would think that if you saw stuff like that happen, you'd be like, "Oh man, I got Superman powers now. I could do anything on the planet." But yet Moses is sitting here telling God, "Please don't send me anyone else." And so it makes me think, how often do I do the same type of thing where I feel like God's calling me to do something, but yet I'm saying, "Man, can't somebody else do this? I'm not good at speaking, or I'm not good at doing this or that, whatever the case might be." But the thing is God still accomplished his mission. He finally was just like fed. It's like, "Fine, let's get Aaron. Go get Aaron. I'll use him. Oh, but by the way, bring your staff along because I'm still going to use you anyway." So uh, if if we don't step up, God's still going to accomplish his plan, you know. But do we want him to be there available to allow him to use us, or do we want to whine and cry about we're not good enough? I've heard you say it many times, Will, and I've heard other people say it, God doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called. And so just like, he gave Moses all these powers to turn the staff into a snake and back to a staff. And of course, we know all the other things that happens on down the road. He can equip us to do whatever it is that he wants us to do if we'll allow him, but we have to allow him. So what's your thoughts on that, Will?
Yeah, man, that's some good stuff. I love this section of Exodus. Kind of interesting. My couple initial thoughts is when you look at the structure of this, it's almost like Moses is the president in a sense, and then Aaron is the press secretary, right? He's the one that's doing the communication. He's good at that. Let him do that, and Moses is the one that's gonna kind of direct and follow God in that time. And so, really interesting in 3, where it says verse 6:14, God replied to Moses, "I am who I am. Say this to the people of Israel, I am has sent me to you." So there's a direct correlation of the New Testament in John chapter 8, where the let me get to it here. So John chapter 8, the people basically, there's that woman caught in adultery, and then there's Jesus is talking about Abraham, and he says, "I tell you the truth, before Abraham was even born, I am." And so, it's an interesting thing to think about that, Jesus was there before, right? And John really captured this in his book, because in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God, right? And so, when I see this, it just reminds me of the sovereignty of God. Now, on the whole aspect in the talk on not feeling equipped, it's funny as you read through Scripture and you read Old Testament, all the way through the Old Testament and the New Testament, it's never God using the people that are like you said, God doesn't call the equipped, he equips the called. And so there's always people who feel like they aren't worthy to be used by God. And Moses is no exception here, kind of the first, right? Where he's like, come on, he said anybody else. And then he's like, I'm not good at talking. And God's like, well, your brother Aaron is really good at talking, so we're gonna send him with you. And nothing was going to stop God from accomplishing his plan. And he's going to use you in a way that you never thought you'd be used, and give you the abilities to do things you never thought you could do. And, I've seen this so many times in my life. I mean, I remember when I graduated college, I got my first job at a college was at a hospital as a sysadmin, and it was a good job. And then after a year, I got offered a job to basically work for Microsoft. It was a third party that did a lot of work for Microsoft. Anyways, I was making very good money as a young person, very blessed, and I felt called to go into full-time vocational ministry. And I did not feel like I was the guy. Like, no, God, this can't be right. Right? I'm successful in my career. I'm in my early 20s. Everything's going really good. And, I don't have a formal education on the Bible. I don't feel like I'm good enough. And one of the things I realized after the fact in my over 5 years of full time ministry as a youth pastor is that God used me in ways I never would have thought he would have. And he put me in places and used me to do things that I would have never done. And I was in several situations a catalyst for things to change in a good way within the churches I was in, or years after, finding out how much of an influence in a good way I was to youth that I never thought were paying attention in class. And seeing transformation in kids and adults that I I didn't have the ability to do. And the whole time I thought, God, this isn't for me, right? I should not be in ministry. And he continued to use me. And, so often we doubt ourselves, and rightfully so, because it's not us that's doing it, it's God in us, right? And God doesn't care about your past. He does, right? But he's not using you based on your past, but he does in situations where he's using your testimony. But you look at all the New Testament, all the disciples, all the people that Jesus was calling to follow him and be the first ones to carry out the gospel message, were fishermen, tax collectors, like people you wouldn't expect. And who was the first person that Jesus came to after resurrection? Was a woman. Culturally speaking, that was crazy. And not only was it crazy, but the fact that they wrote it down, and that, when you read Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, when they talk about it, like, you don't just write that stuff down and expect it, to be popular. Like, they knew as they were writing, there's like, man, people aren't going to like it when they read this, but they were being faithful to the Lord and they were doing it. All of them didn't feel like they were equipped, didn't feel like they were doing the right thing. And so many times, we feel like we're not equipped to do what God has called us to do. And it's even as simple as, like, in your workplace, like being a light. And if you work in a very secular industry and very hostile environment, right? I worked in manufacturing for a while, And man, the shop floor is some of the crudest places you'll ever be. You were in the military. Man, military is some of the crudest places you'll ever be. But how, as a Christian, do we walk through those scenarios and be the light? And man, it's hard. And you don't think you can do it. Like, you know, you're going to get walking to work and you're going to get razzed or somebody's going to cuss you out. And, how do we do that? And we don't feel like we're, equipped to do so. And God said, just rely on me and I'll provide. And so this is good stuff, man. I could talk about this stuff all night.
Amen. So, man, I know that you have been, speaking of not feeling equipped and maybe getting uncomfortable and stepping out of our comfort zone. I seen on your Instagram, you've been stepping out of your comfort zone and trying some new things in the shop there. And I love how you've been combining your wife's glass work, man. That sign you made with her glass, it was sweet. So let's kind of talk about the getting out of our comfort zone, what we've been doing to challenge ourselves here lately. I'll let you go ahead and kick that off.
Yeah. So, man, there's a lot been going on. Obviously, we haven't recorded in a couple of weeks. And so there's been a lot going on in the shop. And I actually forgot about that one with my wife's logo. So thanks for reminding me. That is definitely one of them. I've been doing laser engraving for a while now. I'm very comfortable with engraving things. But I recently upgraded my laser engraver and now I can cut. And that's really opened up things that I've never been able to do. I've been able to do the laser engraving and it's kind of 3-dimensional, right? I can engrave and you could feel it, but actually being able to cut out parts to make 3-dimensional things has been pretty cool. But to your point, so first thing, my wife brought this idea to me. My wife is a stained glass artist and she has a logo, and the top part of her logo is like a stained glass collage thing. And she's like, hey, I'm going to make that in about a 12-inch round, stained glass. It would be really cool if you could take a piece of wood, route out that circle, and then laser engrave the text below it. And then I could have that to take to shows and just have in the shop and stuff. And so, I have routed out stuff before, but trying to do so in a precise manner was kind of difficult. And it's really funny. I was kind of a goofball. I used my trim router, forgetting 100% that I have a 2.5, 3 horsepower plunge router that I could have made quick work of this. It took me 40 minutes to do it when it could have taken me 5 minutes because I, was using the underpowered router trying to route out this thing. So I did that. Not really outside my zone per se, but a couple things that have been. One, my wife again approached me, and she had this idea to make a nativity scene with a star that hung above it with a piece of like wire. And she asked if I could make a block that I would route a groove into, or I used the table saw to do it. And then she had a tea light that would go behind it and light up the thing. And so it was kind of a fun evening. Last Monday evening, I was off Tuesday. And so we were at the shop till 1 a.m. together. And I took a piece of cherry rough and I milled it down and made these little blocks to hold up the nativity scene. Did you see that, Tom? Did I send you a picture of that?
Yeah, that was pretty cool.
And so the thing with that I've never done before is I use the laser engraver to make a perfect circle and actually route out a spot for the tea light to sit so it wouldn't move around. And so I did a few passes and did like probably a 16th or maybe closer to 1/8 of an inch route with the laser to route out a spot for the tea light to sit. And because lasers are, CNCs and they're very precise, I did the circle to exact that I would need for the tea lights, and I was able to make it cut a circle out, and nice little spot for that. So that was one thing that I did in the shop that was kind of, a little bit of a challenge. But the big thing is you and I said this earlier in the podcast. We are in the Maker Collab logo swap for the month of November. And I was really intimidated by this. When you sent it to me, I was like, yeah, sure, I'll do it. But I was honestly scared. I'm like, one, you've been in the sign business almost as long as I've been alive. And so making signs and logos is like second nature to you. And I'm like, I can laser engrave anything, but this has to be more than that. And so I'll talk about what I did, and then we'll end up posting pictures on Instagram. By the time you hear this podcast, it'll already be done and over with. But so I'll talk about what I did, and then the things that I did that challenged me that I'd never done before. So with the new laser, I can cut out 3-dimensional things where I can cut things out of like 1/8" ply. And so I took 1/8" ply and I cut out every piece of your logo, every single piece, from the mountains to the letters to the saw blade, the whole thing, everything. And I cut everything out with 1/8" ply. And then my initial thing I was going to do that my wife, and I appreciate her because I wouldn't have had the time. Some other things have come up. So I'm glad I got it done when I got it done. And, there's other things going on now. But is I was going to cut it out of acrylic because I can cut acrylic. And I was going to cut it out of acrylic, all matched to the color of your logo, and then backlight it with LEDs. That would have been really cool, but I didn't have the time for that. And honestly, that was a whole nother thing. But what I did do is I cut out all of your pieces, and I took a really nice piece of walnut and I milled it down. And the one thing I knew that I wanted to do, and anybody that's listening knows that I've developed my own hard wax oil finish, and I want to use my hard wax oil finish on my projects. And so the problem you run into, my plan was to take your logo pieces that I cut out and paint them the proper colors of your logo, and then glue them on the piece of walnut and, finish it in my oil. Well, one, I'm not going to finish painted pieces with my oil. That just doesn't make sense. And two, I didn't know how I would do that to where I could still glue down the pieces and stick. Because if I use hard wax oil, glue's not going to stick to it. It's just wax, right? And so my idea was, and I was like, this is going to be really kind of, I would say, ballsy for better lack of term, is I finished the piece of walnut completely. I sanded it up to like 800 grit and put 3 coats of finish on it. Looked really nice. And I, once I got all the pieces cut out and painted, I re-laser engraved your logo in the same size that I cut the pieces out on that already finished walnut. Now, I had tested it on another piece, so I knew it was probably going to work, and I laser engraved it super deep so that I could have a place to glue to that doesn't have finish on it and have a perfect alignment for the logo. And I was pretty scared because this is the only piece of this walnut that I had for the right size that I needed for this. And I was like, oh my goodness, I don't think this is the best idea. But I'm one of those people that I tend to just send it with things and then figure it out after if it messes up. And so yeah, that's what I did. And everything worked great. Worked exactly how I thought it would. Really awesome with that. But here's the thing. I'm not in the sign business. I felt completely out of the, and I've seen these not, this for something on the logo swap, but I've seen the Maker Collab and I've seen the challenges they do. And I knew, like, man, there's some talent here. And so for those that don't know, the winning team gets free tickets to Workbench Con. Workbench Con is like $1,000 a ticket to get in. And so, it'd be awesome. Like, I won't go to Workbench Con normally because I'm too cheap. But if the tickets are free, I can afford a plane ticket, and you know what I mean. And so, uh, I felt inadequate in that sense. You know everything about signs, and you know how to make signs and put dimension to them and do all the stuff. And I'm like, well, dang, I'm working with Tom, and Tom knows signs. Should I even do this? Like, I don't feel like I'm equipped. This is the first time that I've ever cut out on the laser engraver a project. Now, I did do some ornaments, small ornaments, just to test out the cutting ability, but this is like a thing. And then I've never, this is gonna laugh, I've never painted stuff for a wood project, for and so like colors. And then there's part of your logo that you can't just paint; you have to actually do it by hand because there's snow in the mountains. I'm like, I'm not good at this stuff, right? And so, anyways, there's all these challenges that I really didn't feel like I was adequate to do. And I do as I do. I don't plan. I have an idea in my head and I just send it. And it worked. And I'm really happy with it. And so yeah, that's been the project that I've been, kind of working on in the shop a lot, and haven't felt really adequate about it. And I'm happy with the results. It's not perfect, but it did what I wanted to do. It's a, really cool piece. And Tom will see pictures when we post the pictures and stuff. So, but yeah, so that's been one of the things that I've really challenged myself to. And yeah, and just, and another side of that is the hard wax wool finish. Like, I'm doing something that I feel passionate about, but I'm not a chemist. I'm not a business person per se. And I have an idea, and I created a product that I feel is really good. And all the feedback I'm getting from all the people I've sent it to say it is, and I'm just going with it. I'm sending it. I'm like, okay, here it is, God, let's do it. Right. And so, but yeah, there's so many things that I could talk about, about doing all like woodworking. I remember when I made a spoon in the driveway of my house. I'd never carved anything in my life. And I was off one day, my wife worked, and I went out there and I grabbed a piece of walnut and I carved a spoon, right? It's just like, oh, I didn't know I could do that, And so, yeah, lots of stuff like that. How about you? What's some things that have challenged you in the shop that you haven't felt adequate for?
Oh man, that I feel like every time I go in the shop, I feel inadequate, especially particularly when I watch other uh, woodworkers and look at their projects that I'm just like in awe of the amazing work that some of the people out there are able to do. And it's everybody has their own journey, and that start at different points in their lives. And some inherit wood shops that are full of tools that they grew up around. Others of us, my dad was a engineer, and he was a mechanic. He was always working on cars and stuff. And we've had a couple woodworking tools out in the shop, but he wasn't. It was more for cutting a two before, that type stuff. So I didn't have anybody teach me any woodworking skills. When I was a kid, I took woodshop my senior year in high school. And the reason I took woodshop in my senior year is because I flunked chemistry in my junior year. So my mom and dad, they were like, you got to go to college, get a good job, with a good corporation, and, that the American dream. But that wasn't what I was meant to do. And after I flunked chemistry in my junior year, my mom just stormed to the school like she was mad. And my chemistry teacher told her, said, look, your son is one of the hardest working kids in the class, but he's not meant to be a chemist. Like he has given 110% in here. He is never going to be a chemist. This is not his cup of tea. And, but he told her, he said, but he's going to be good at something because he's got a great work ethic. And so after that, I knew I wasn't going to go to college. I'd already decided I was going to go in the Air Force. And so I told my mom, I was like, I had like 2 classes I needed to graduate. And so I filled the rest of my schedule with what I call fluff classes, but I took woodshop and I loved it. And ironically, in fact, I think this week on my Instagram, I'm going to post a picture. So in that wood shop, I made my mom a wooden mallard, and it's now it's not like some elaborate thing you're seeing a piece of in a studio somewhere, but the fact, I mean, it looks like a mallard, and made my dad a gun rack and some other different things, and but that started my addiction to tools, and it's like, oh man, I can make stuff out of wood. And then, of course, I went in the Air Force, and then living in dorms, I didn't have tools. So for many years, I never had access to woodworking. But so anyway, I know that's way off topic. We're talking about getting uncomfortable, but I have been working on a bunch of projects in the shop. And every time I have an idea in my head, and I've never done it before, it's the process of figuring it out. How am I going to do it? So this week, my neighbor, and you might have seen it I posted it on my Instagram. So my neighbor, she brought me down this old table, and it was too high. She was like, she bought it used somewhere, and she was going to refinish it, but she's like, this thing just needs to be 4 inches shorter. Well, it had these funky tapered legs. And I was like, and how do you go about taking oddball shaped legs, cutting them where they're perfectly parallel to the ground? And so anyway, I sat there and I brainstormed on it a little bit. And then I came up with a very simple method after I thought about it. But I was so nervous. I'm sitting here thinking, I'm going to cut into the legs of this nice piece of furniture. If I mess this up, it came out perfect. That lady was so happy. And I mean, it sits flush. In fact, it sat better on the floor after I did it than it did before. And, but, it's just every time something new presents itself, and unless you've had a teacher or a mentor that has taught you that, it's figuring out, okay, what tools do I have? How am I going to go about this? And basically I just made a little jig, clamped it to the legs, and used that as a guide with my handsaw, and scored a line all the way around all 4 legs, and then went back and cut through all of them, and came out perfect. But other than that, I've been working on the logo, and I don't want to right now verbally tell you what it's going to be, because I'm excited about it though. So I'm doing some things that I've never done before. And so the one thing you have to remember, so yes, I have been in the sign business for 25 years, but in North Carolina, I had a really nice universal laser. If I had that here, oh my gosh, it would make it. I don't have a laser right now. I'm planning to get another one. But hashtag Laguna or Thunder, who wants to sell me a laser the most? but but yeah, anyway, so everything I'm doing, I'm doing by hand with the tools I have. But I'm pretty excited because I'm doing some hand carving on your logo, and this is all new to me, so it's experimental. But it's going to be beautiful when I'm done. But and ironically, I know this is very basic woodworking, but a week ago, I decided one day I had this really small piece of walnut that was absolutely beautiful, and you had sent me the jar of finish that you had made to test out, and I was dying to test it out on something, and I didn't have a project to put it on, and so I made my first charcuterie board. Now I know for everybody listening, that's no big deal, but I just never have made one just because it I don't know why. Cutting boards and charcuterie boards are not my thing, but I decided that day to make my wife a charcuterie board so that I could try out your finish. And so, I made something simple that was new. But I am making a stand. So I mentioned this a couple months ago. I wanted to do this for my daughter's Christmas. She has one of those one wheels, and it's like a go-kart wheel mounted on a balance board that you stand on top of and zoom all over the place. I've tried it. I'm not very good at it, but she can ride that thing anywhere. It's amazing. But the problem with it is that you just sit in the floor and takes up space and the cord, and it's an awkward thing to store anywhere. So I designed this several months ago and I just haven't had time to build it, but I started working on that. And so that is actually, I entered into the handmade Christmas challenge over on Maker Challenge Central. And so this stand is what I'm entering in that challenge. I don't expect it to win. I just wanted to, I kind of like meeting the people. And so I, entered that challenge, and then also then the logo swap challenge with you. So it's getting out of my comfort zone. And the way I'm making it is using a couple techniques that I've never done. You ever watch Chris Salamone, Four Eyes Furniture on YouTube?
Oh yeah, I love Four Eyes.
So he built, and I want to say Sean Boyd and a couple other people have done it too, but he built a table out of plywood that it's basically kind of has a layer, the shape of the table, and then spaced with little small pieces of plywood, then another shape, and so it looks segmented across the table. And so I'm making this kind of like that style, if it makes sense. I'll send you a picture after I finish it. But the whole process of doing it is way out of my comfort zone. And so it's just kind of exciting trying new things. And once you get your sign, you'll see one thing on it that it'll be the first time I've ever done it. And so you'll be able to, it's got a dovetail in it. The hand cut. So
Yes.
yeah. So anyway, but yeah, man. So other than that, I have had a lot of time in the shop. I hadn't had too terribly many installs the last couple of weeks, so had a quite a bit of time working in my shop, getting things organized, and I built a wood rack. I took this back corner of my wall. That's kind of, I called it my catch-all corner, and I built a wall all the way down the wall, a wood rack, and then right above that, French cleats, and then above that, some shelving. So I completely emptied out these two Roland storage units that I had from Sam's. Got every single piece of wood I have. There is not a scrap wood piece of wood on the floor in my shop anywhere. And it feels so fantastic to be able to walk over there to the wood rack and see everything that I have, scrap wise. I made one rack. The first 8 feet is where my sheet goods are. And then the rest of it, I just made some vertical bins where I could store all the scraps. And man, you would not believe, it just feels good for the shop to be getting organized. And the other thing I did on, I started an Instagram account a few months ago, but I just kind of put a couple pictures on there, some things, and didn't really do anything with it. Well, I kind of felt challenged that for 100 days, I'm going to post a reel every day. And so I've never videoed anything and done all this stuff. And so it has been quite an experience. Now, it's not like millions of people are watching my stuff, but it's been pretty cool to interact with people and have some people reach out and say, man, I never thought about doing that way, or thanks for posting that. That helped me. I was working on something, just different stuff. So kind of excited by this. It's been kind of fun too. And it makes me think through, things in a different angle, if that makes sense. So, but
Yeah,
yeah, so
you've inspired me to be more organized. So much to the point that you and a couple of people. I ordered. There's a guy I follow on Instagram, Peter Kapar, Petry's Workshop, and he has
yeah,
a 3D printing business. He's part of the Another Woodshop podcast, and he sells uh, DeWalt, all the different battery drill brands, but DeWalt battery mounts. They're 3D printed. You could organize all your batteries. And then the reverse of that, the same thing that you can hang your tools on. So you can put them like under a shelf or under a cabinet and hang up all your tools. And I was like, you know what? After seeing all your stuff about organizing your plywood, I'm like, you know what? I need to get organized. And the other person, somebody that we just had on the podcast, Drew Witt, his
man, his
method,
shop is immaculate, isn't it?
yeah, that's pretty neat.
Yeah.
But his method of organizing is how I would do it if I were to do it again, and
So
just
it's
plywood and screwing things to plywood.
Yeah, it's the only difference between the way Drew's doing it on his and the way I did mine is that he's screwing it straight to the plywood, and all I do is I mount the slats, the with the 45, the French cleat strips, and the only reason I do that is because I can make the holder, put it up there, and then if I decide I want to move it around, it's just grab it, slide it over, that sort of thing. But as far as making the holder, it's the exact same. The only difference is I'm mounting a little cleat on the back of mine. He's screwing it straight into the wall. But if I knew exactly where I wanted everything, that would be easy. But you get a new tool and now, okay, where does it go? And so that's the only reason I like the movability of the French cleat system.
Yeah,
But yeah,
I think
Drew's shop looks awesome.
so. I've got probably 3/4 of a sheet of plywood left over, sanded 3/4 inch ply from doing some of the subfloor in my house. And so I have a space on my back wall by where my laser's at and above my one toolbox that I'm going to screw up some of this plywood, and then I'm going to build a shelf and I'm going to hang all my DeWalt stuff from it. And it's just going to be a kind of I've never done before kind of project. Like I'm going to do some organization and try to, because I've got DeWalt batteries all over the place. I've got all my DeWalt battery operated tools. I've got all the stuff, right? Nailers. I even got the flashlight. I've got sanders. I've got uh, jigsaws, reciprocating saws, drills, all the stuff. And I'm like, so I went through and I counted how many things I had, and then I ordered all of it from Peter, Petry's Workshop. I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to get it all. And by spending the money, it's going to force me to actually use what I bought. And so, pretty excited about that. I'm going to try to do a little bit of organization. So,
Yep, I'm on a mission to get mine. And the cool thing about getting all that built this week is now I have the spot in my shop ready for the laser. So next up this week, I'm going to be building a dust collection. I should say a dust collection system. All I'm doing is relocate my dust collector. And I'm going to put some hard piping in down one wall. Because right now I literally roll my dust collector from tool to tool, because I didn't really know where I wanted everything. I didn't want to go spend the time and money hard piping anything in. So that is next up on the list for me. I'm hoping I got to finish the logo swap challenge and I got to finish the Christmas gift. And then I got to figure out where I'm going to hide that thing so that she doesn't, because that challenge ends at the end of November as well. So I'll probably actually find a box and wrap it, and just, it ain't going to fit under the tree, but it'll be whatever. So
you also
cool deal.
inspired me. You and somebody else posted a video of the Harvey dust collector. What's yours? The
G700.
G700.
Mhm.
And so I have just a, like a 2 horsepower normal dust collector, but in the future, because the plan is that we're going to build a shop, and, my wife will have her stained glass and I'll have a dedicated shop. That way we can actually park in the garage. And so that's probably going to be in like 2 years once we save up and be able to pay cash to do that. But I want to upgrade my dust collection. I want to get a little more serious about it. And I know you, Bourbon Moth, Keith Johnson, several people that have, Derek from Malden. All you guys have that Harvey G700, and it's not that, I mean, it's expensive, but it's not outrageous for what it is. And
Yeah, but
so,
if you get it when it's on sale, it's still expensive, but
like right now,
it's really good.
they're like $2,500 right now. Of course,
It's
I don't I don't have that in the budget, and that's not, I can't do that right now. But yeah, it's on sale right now. So
Yeah. So I have the G700 Bourbon Moth, and I think Keith Johnson has a 700. I'm not sure, but Bourbon Moth has the next one up. He has
oh
the big daddy. Yeah.
yeah,
That's like a $5,000, but it's a monster, man. That thing will be, but mine does everything I need it to do.
yeah,
And the
yeah,
beauty
absolutely.
of the G700 is versus a vertical cyclone, it sits short and flat. So, like, I'm getting ready to where I'm going to locate it at. I'm going to build a table over top of it, and that'll be my work table for my laser once I get my laser. So, yeah, it'll work out good.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, but yeah, other than that, I don't have too much going on in the shop aside from my wife is in a craft show in 2 weeks. And so she's making like stained glass ornaments and all kinds of stuff. She's been going crazy making stuff because it's her first ever craft show. Well, she's like, I don't have to, I can sell more than just craft stuff. And so I laser cut out several ornaments, and I have some charcuterie boards that I bought from not Harbor Freight, from Hobby Lobby when they had their big like 60% off all wood things. And so I'm just going to engrave some generic like blessed family, onto some of these. And then just, I paid like $4 a piece for them, and we'll list them for like $15 or something. And so yeah, I've been working on that. And then I've been having fun with nailers. You had sent me a 18 gauge Brad, and then I also got a 23 gauge pin nailer, and it's been fun. Like I built my assembly outfeed table is just 2x4 construction with a 2x4 like yeah, anyways, and then MDF top, and I've just been like messing around shooting nails into the legs of this thing because they're 4x4s, and I'm just like, I just want to use it. And so I actually had a logo, my Flat Woodworks logo that's one of the first things I ever laser engraved. It's just on a small piece of plywood that I tried, and I was like, oh, so I pinned that up to my workbench underneath, like on the stretcher, just because I wanted to use the nailer. So I've been going crazy. But
Oh man, I'm the same way. Whenever I get a new tool, I'm like, I just got to find something to make now, But
yeah,
so I think I'm gonna pull the uh, the plug and order that drum sander this week.
ah,
Jet's 15% off right now, so pretty sure I'm gonna go ahead and get the 2550, and
that's gonna be
while I'm
nice.
doing it. Well, that's what I'm debating back and forth because, on one hand, it takes up a little more space in the shop versus I was going to go with the 1836, but then I'm like, man, cabinet doors 24 inches wide. I just did a table, 20. I'm like, nah, I really want that wider width. So I think I'm going to pull the plug
Is that
and
a
get the
dual belt or a
2550.
single belt?
No, I can't afford a dual belt, man. I wish I could. And I've debated on that, on whether I should wait a few more years and save up. But then also the dual belt ones take up more space.
Yeah, they're big.
And it would be nice, but if you're a production shop, that would be a 100% no brainer, because you could put like, 120 on the front and, 150, 180 on the back. It comes out and it's done. But I'm not a production shop. This is a hobby for me. And if I ever, retire and I'm doing that kind of volume, then I can upgrade. But just for the, thicknessing, thinner stuff, putting that, micro in there, you're not replacing your planer, but I have a, 13-inch lunchbox planer, which does fantastic. But like that table I just did, after the glue up and stuff, to be able to go back and run the whole width of the tabletop through, it would just be so nice. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and suck it up and spend the few $100s extra and get the 2550. So
yeah, that'll be nice. I've seen some guys that have the big industrial ones that are planers as well. They plane and then they sand.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that's a whole other world.
You're not fitting that in my shop.
Right.
And I don't have that kind of money either. So, but
yeah, I hear that.
That would be way overkill for me.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, they're cool though. But well, man, it's getting late here. I gotta be up for work tomorrow. But I hope everybody enjoyed this episode. And this week is Thanksgiving week, so I know I'm excited and ready to be back in Pennsylvania for a holiday and not have to travel up here. So pretty excited about that. But man, until next week, I hope everybody has a good rest of your day. I'm Will from Flat Woodworks.
And I'm Tom from Mountain Valley Maker.
And we'll talk to you guys next time.